This is an urgent update to assignment number 1 essays in regards to the autumn semester 2021 of the unit 102085 Aboriginal and Culturally Responsive Pedagogies. This announcement relates to both the quiz, which is the Stronger Smarter module completion, and also the essay question. The quiz mentioned in the learning guide this year has been deleted as the Stronger Smarter module cannot be made available in the required time to Western Sydney University students this semester. This results in the requirement to change the two assessment essay questions so that they do not reflect the Stronger Smarter module component. This has meant that the requirement for the hurdle task on the 14th of the 3rd is no longer part of the advertised learning guide, and both questions options 1 and option 2 have had required modifications made to simplify those essays so that there is no requirement to engage with the Stronger Smarter module completion this weekend. When we look at the two questions and the modifications, very similar structure to previously advertised questions. However, the questions have no reference now to the Stronger Smarter modules. Both questions require you to also include references to your set text, Price and Rogers, to the Closing the Gap report, and to the individual readings that are related to each of the essays. Option 1 refers to the Riley and Pigeon article, and option 2 requires students to refer to the Ord article. When attempting option 1, after you've read the article, you'll see that there's a number of things that could be addressed and angles that could be approached. But I would like for you to think about what is considered the kinds of changes. Teacher's mindset, and that might include understanding alternative worldviews, which we've already looked at in weeks 1 and 2 in the lecture, intercultural competency and experiences, and that's what this unit is all about. Perhaps moving our Western biases to the more boomerang approach, where we have more balanced approaches to knowledge and whose knowledge matters. And finally, things like teacher education. Do you think it's important that the sorts of things that feed into stereotypes, intercultural competency and Western biases being prevalent could be addressed through better teacher education in the higher education process? This week we looked very, very briefly in the lecture around the Parbury cycle or the deficit model. This might help you to choose one or two of those areas to address in your option 1 essay. When looking at option 1 essay, make sure that your introduction limits the scope of your paper. You do not have 8,000 words to address every single aspect, so choose particular aspects you're going to focus on and narrow that down by making strong introductions part of the process of your good writing. When we're looking for avenues, a little bit will be talked about this in week 3 for a better understanding of what happens in terms of schools' engagement and schools' cultural responsiveness, and particularly what are we looking for in terms of exemplary students of teachers, exemplary teachers of students in poverty. So we'll look at some of the work that stems from Western Sydney University and the academics there. So having a look at those 3 documents might also help you to unpack particular concepts that you're wanting to address in your option. In option 2, the topic area is anti-racism, what is required to develop a strong idea and understanding of anti-racism. And in the ORD article, we look at the mandatory reporting as anti-racism and the strategies that might need to be facilitated in schools and a better understanding in schools and teacher education around racism as emotional abuse, anti-racism as a strategy of successful learning programs, the support of anti-racism by teachers and students, everyday anti-racism, and professional learning associated with mandatory reporting. So what you might do is undertake an approach that looks at the New South Wales Aboriginal Education Policy and looks at some of those priority areas and who's responsible for each area in that policy document, and then you might unpack that a little bit in relation to mandatory reporting and your position. So it asks you to critically analyse school disciplinary practices and their effects in relation to behaviour, wellbeing, inclusion of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. So a lot to do, but in the same way I've said of option 1, in option 2, choose the strategies or the particular focus that your anti-racism essay will take, by doing that in a strong introduction. There are now also examples of introductions and parts of body essays from previous essay questions that will give you ideas about how to write in this unit. There are also a number of things that we have to do in terms of the option 2 paper, and one of them is explore the school and social factors that contribute to the behavioural problems and the social inequity. And students who are attempting this paper should be looking at the Dobia and Roffey article and the Dobia and O'Rourke article, looking at the promotion of mental health and well-being, the notion of respect for culture, and particularly when we're looking at our standards, we would be looking at Standard 4. The final component of this essay requires you to look at perhaps providing an example of what is best practice in your curriculum area. And of course you wouldn't have to present all of this, you would cut this down into some statements, but I'm putting it there as an opportunity for me to show you a number of ways in which we would call illustrations of practice can happen. So when we're looking at how to approach something in an 8 ways approach, the notion of Australia Day, of course, is very controversial, but it also is one of those areas in outcome 8 of the English syllabus where we can respond to and compose text, and in particular down here where we can respond to and compose texts in a range of different modes and media, recognising and appreciating cultural factors, including cultural backgrounds and perspectives. So you might start with the storytelling aspect or the narrative aspect of story sharing here in the 8 ways, and also the land link, Australia Day being predominantly a Sydney event, however, in terms of position and land link, but of course it's celebrated also all throughout Australia in various ways. So you might look at the book, A Daybreak, a very simple Year 7 or Year 8 text. It's actually children's literature. Very, very easy to read, and you would be engaging with that text in a short shared reading exercise perhaps, and then you might use Stephen Oliver's poetry, Hate, He Said, and Hate, He Said is a fairly complex poem, but has a lot of opportunities for students to unpack the various complexities of the debate. This is also one of those poems that might be used in history. So for those of you who are history teachers, this is another opportunity to show you something around how you might unpack poetry. I'm just going to go back to this area, and here we have Stephen Oliver's dramatical voiceover of the poem Hate, He Said. So that's another way that we can introduce aspects of multimedia, various kinds of texts, which is a requirement of the English syllabus 7 to 10. So these are just ideas. Hopefully you've all looked at your emails, you understand the modifications in terms of the essay questions, and that this support material will allow you to develop those essays fairly quickly. Thank you.